Well, hey guys, welcome to Extra with LifePoint. We're so glad that you join us every single week, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe to send this to all your friends. It just helps with the algorithm, and we appreciate you so much. We are continuing in our series, Caves, Finding God in Dark Places, and Pastor Rusty preached this morning. That's what's up. Honestly, like this whole caves thing, like honestly, after Sundays, I think that our team is all just exhausted. And it's like, I want to go sleep in a cave. You know?
100%.
Yeah.
Actually, someone came up to me and said, Russ, I don't know what you said today, but the cave behind you looks so good. I want to know where that's at. They want to go spelunking in the cave. I don't know.
100%.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I have some questions for you guys. Sir. And the whole purpose of this podcast, for those of you who are listening for the first time, is we just want to get a little bit extra from the sermons that we listen to on Sunday morning. And so make sure to listen to the sermon as well. But this is just a little extra behind the scenes. And first question I have for you here is, in your sermon, you mentioned that loneliness can be one of the deepest forms of pain. How can we practically address loneliness in our lives, especially when it feels like God's presence is distant? And now I know this is a simple question, so
it's a really long one too.
Yeah.
But let me throw it back at you. Like, how do you deal with loneliness in your life? You probably never had it.
I'm never lonely. Never. You know, God's always with me. So good.
How have you dealt with it?
Honestly, not always the best of ways. And I think it's just the go-tos of, man, when I'm lonely, I kind of look towards, inwardly more of, and kind of and analyze myself, look at myself. I, then, vent to my wife about it. But honestly, what has helped me, and it's not even like, because I don't like cliche Christian things that we just kind of do, but honestly, truly, the best thing that has helped me in moments of loneliness is just journaling and just like writing out those moments and being able to look back 2-3 months from now and to read those moments. And it just kind of helps me to realize that God was, I wasn't alone during that time, and he was with me in those moments. But it's just hard. It's just really hard.
It's challenging, dude. And I'm with you. Like, I don't do it well either. Like I had a military upbringing and whatnot. And so I moved all over the place. So I isolate, even when I know that community and small groups and whatnot is what I should do. And honestly, not just a should, but it's really what will replenish me. But I just don't naturally do that. And so a lot of times it's fighting whatever that natural instinct that I might have formed over the years. I'm with you, dude. I don't journal well. Like I'm always going, and I don't like to sit. But at this, I think I have like 8 different journals on my desk right now. Half of a quarter full on each one of them. But I think I'm with you that when I discipline myself well enough to do that, it's been helpful to be able to see where God's moved.
Yeah, definitely. And taking from the aspect of caves and just the whole premise of just being alone too, like I think that naturally just we as people, we like to run from those moments of being alone, but that God actually wants to teach you something in those moments.
There are times. There are times. We're again, like Pastor Kirby talked about last week, when he talked about Elijah. And he's coming out of the cave, and God wasn't in those big, huge, demonstrative things. But in the still small voice. And so I think that there are moments where we can run toward that. But if I'm being honest, like that's not easy. It's challenging. Those deep, darker moments of our life. And that's why I love this series. I think it's given people some handlebars to really be able to understand how to navigate some of the things that they're going through.
Yeah, definitely. And like coming back to just, what the church has to offer, not just LifePoint, but just church in general, for all of you that are listening. Like, I think that once you're willing to actually take that next step to, hey, I'm going to be a part of something. I'm going to join a small group, even though this is totally out of my comfort zone.
For sure.
Or we just had our men's breakfast this past week. And
so good.
New guys showing up. And I love men's breakfast because there's always those guys that will just hang out in the lobby and they're like, I don't know what to do right now. I don't know who to talk to. I just heard that there was bacon.
Sure.
But it's just so encouraging, especially for me and for you, like being a part of the church. I think that we just get normalized to it. But for those guys, it's like, no, this is like a huge deal for them. And they're trying to break these patterns. And it's an encouragement. So
that was the last point of the message, was that we have to kind of move that type of discouragement or that loneliness out of our lives. And basically what that means is taking steps toward healing or wholeness or joy or peace or whatever.
Yeah.
And oftentimes there's steps that we don't love doing because they're against the way that our brain maybe kind of works, or synapses fire automatically. And so like you said, as Big C Church, or even at LifePoint, I mean, there's groups, there's mid-sized groups, there's alpha, there's serving.
Yep.
I mean, people come over here on Sunday mornings and they just open doors for people.
Yep.
But at the same time, they feel like, man, I'm a part of something that God is doing, and I just brought a smile to that person.
Yeah.
And that can really start to bring us out of those loneliness feelings as we build even larger spheres of community and influence.
Yeah, definitely. And it was funny. I got coffee with an old youth student of ours. He's in college now. And we were talking about how early on, as he was attending our high school ministry, like he had that spiritual high, that a lot of early Christians get. Like, I mean, I had those moments where it's just like, everything was like new. It's like seeing life in color for the first time. It's just like, you have this awe and wonder in God. And he's meeting with me now. And he's just like, Colin, I feel lonely and God feels distant, and I'm not feeling it anymore.
Yeah.
And I forget who it was. I think it was John Mark Comer that talked about how this is something that happens in the early process of a Christian's life, where God is trying to graciously wean you off of the feeling of God.
So
because
good.
early on, early Christians, like, you don't really like love God. You love the feeling of God. And it's in those moments of loneliness where he's trying to show you, like, no, this isn't just a feeling. Like, this isn't just me, like, hey, I'm going to give you all this love and grace and everything's good. But it's like in that valley moment where this old student was, where he's just like, God, I don't feel God. Like, is there something wrong with me? But it's like, no, God's just trying to show you, hey, this isn't feelings.
Yeah.
This is just love.
Yeah.
And so, it was really good.
Good job.
And something else I wanted to talk about in your sermon, you mentioned complaints and talking to God and being real.
I'm so good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. But how do we, just maybe somebody that's listening, they work a 9 to 5 and they don't know, they're not thinking about God all the time, but this new aspect of like, I didn't know I could be honest with God like this. Like, how do we find that balance and, of like being honest with God, but also allowing him to love us in those times of honesty?
I think that's one of the things that I struggled with for a while. Again, I military households, you kind of, there's a hierarchy to things, and you don't ever say something to the highest hierarchy that,
Right.
And so it's hard, but at the same time, I think we do that same thing in our walk with God and Christianity, where we don't really glean from those that came before us. But here's the thing: it's not one of those things that we get to just make up. That this is a religion, this is a relationship that we actually glean from those way in the past, ancient prayers that we glean from our desert fathers and desert mothers and all those types of things, and scripture. Yeah. And when you look at scripture, man, just read through the book of Psalms. And I mentioned it in the message, but it was called the book of praises, the book of Psalms is. It's translated from Hebrew.
Yeah.
But they're full of thanksgiving and full of praise for sure, but they're also very much full of lament.
Yeah.
Which are the, God, why have you totally left me out here in the middle of the desert type of prayers? I'm hurting here. And the epiphany that kind of happened for me was, it's translated the book of praises, and 1/3 of them are, God, I'm angry, or God, I'm hurting. Where are you?
Yeah, real feelings.
Which means those are praises. Which means that I'm able to do that and have a real relationship. Yeah. And it's not just something that I have to just say, 3 happy hops to whatever in the world.
Yeah.
But I can actually be real. And when I started learning that, it totally changed my prayer life. It totally changed, I think, the way that God was able to relate to me and the way I was able to relate to him.
Yeah, yeah. And it just shows that God's not afraid of our questions or our worries.
Yeah.
He's not going to trying to run from it. He's not
strike us down with the thunderbolt.
Yeah, and it's not a time to panic. It's a time to actually sit and process with him and just be in those moments. And so
I think being a dad has really helped me understand it a little bit more.
I love that.
And you're going to be a daddy, and that's amazing. Congratulations, sir.
Yeah.
But I know that I want my babies to come to me and just say, Dad, I'm struggling with this, or Dad, this is amazing, or Dad, whatever.
Yeah.
And that to me is like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
And so if I feel that way as an earthly sinful father, like how much more does God want us to come to him?
That's right.
With just like real thoughts and real feelings.
Yep.
It's just a beautiful picture that I've been able to watch.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up, we have small groups that are meeting throughout the weeks, and they're doing sermon discussion questions, and they're going to be, looking over this sermon. What's maybe one thing that you want them to kind of focus on this week in their small groups?
Oh man. Well, I think it'll be the hardest thing that you do, especially if you're meeting new and you haven't been meeting for a long time. But I think if I could encourage you to take this week's small group, and maybe there's just an extra level of transparency, an extra level of vulnerability, where I think God meets us in so many different ways. But I think he meets us so often when we allow other people to come around us and show us his love and his care. But it takes a little bit of extra vulnerability. Yeah. And so in your small group, if that's you, like maybe just risk it a little bit. I've seen over and over and over, like at Life Point, where people have just said, man, I just want to love you even more.
Yeah.
And so I guess that would be my encouragement to you this week.
No, that's so good. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, Pastor Rusty. I'm, excited for what God's doing in our church, and I'm going to take a nap now. So
here we go.
Appreciate it. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to stay up to date with all of our Extra with Life Point episodes.